You know, there are some mysteries that just stick with you. And for over 60 years, the Dyatlov Pass Incident has been one of the biggest. We're talking 9 lives lost under the absolute strangest circumstances. It's a story that spawned decades of wild theories. But what if the answer wasn't a Yeti, or a secret weapon, or aliens? What if it was just physics? Well, today we're going to break down how modern science might have finally cracked this chilling cold case.
All right, so let's set the scene. It's February 1959. A group of 9 incredibly experienced hikers are on a seriously tough expedition deep in Russia's northern Ural Mountains. They were masters of their craft, and they were never seen alive again.
And this is the last known photograph of the group. What you're seeing here is a critical moment. They're cutting a platform into the snow to pitch their tent for the night. And their chosen location? A mountain named Syakhl, which, and you can't make this stuff up, translates in the local language to Dead Mountain. Yeah. Chilling, right?
Because later that night, in the pitch black and the brutal cold, something went horribly, horribly wrong. Something so terrifying that it caused them to take knives, slash their tent open from the inside, and just run out into the freezing wilderness, many of them without shoes or proper coats. What could possibly make them do that?
So when the search party finally found the campsite weeks later, what they saw made zero sense. First off, the tent was cut open from the inside. They were desperately trying to get out. They'd fled into temperatures of -25°C without the right gear. And while some clearly died of hypothermia, 4 of them had these awful internal injuries, crushed chests, fractured skulls, but with no major external wounds. The official investigation basically just shrugged. They concluded the cause of death was a compelling natural force, which, could mean anything. And that vague conclusion just opened the floodgates for every theory under the sun.
Okay, so let's be real. The most obvious, logical explanation here is an avalanche, right? I mean, they're on a snowy mountain. But here's the thing. For more than 60 years, avalanche experts and investigators kept saying, no way. Impossible. The evidence just didn't add up.
And this is really the heart of the mystery. It all boiled down to these 4 big contradictions that nobody could get past. Number 1, the slope just wasn't steep enough. Number 2, the rescuers found no signs of an avalanche. Number 3, the timing was all wrong. It happened way too long after they'd set up camp. And finally, number 4, those injuries were just bizarre and didn't look like typical avalanche injuries at all.
So for decades, that's where the story stood. A total cold case, full of contradictions. But then, pretty recently, a whole new kind of investigator came along to revisit the scene. A team of scientists armed with modern physics and some seriously powerful computer simulations. They wanted to see if an avalanche was really so impossible after all.
And they weren't just messing around. Their groundbreaking work got published in a major scientific journal in 2021. In this paper, well, this is what we're going to dig into today. It's a truly fascinating look at how we can use modern science to shed light on historical mystery.
So this is the moment of truth. How does this new scientific model possibly explain those 4 big contradictions that stumped everyone for so long? Let's break them down and tackle them one by one. Okay, contradiction number 1. The slope was just too gentle. Everybody knew it. It was measured at about 23 degrees. And for the kind of avalanche that would be dangerous here, a slab avalanche, you're usually looking for a slope of at least 30 degrees. It just shouldn't have been able to slide. But here is the key insight, the brilliant part of the new research. The scientists realized everyone had been looking at the wrong thing. Sure, the surface of the snow was at a mild 23 degrees, but the hikers had dug down, and they had unknowingly set up their tent right on top of a spot where the underlying terrain was much steeper. This meant the weak, buried layer of snow they disturbed was actually resting on a 28-degree slope, which is dangerously close to that 30-degree trigger point. Okay, but hold on. If a slab of snow did slide, where was all the evidence? The search party was adamant they saw nothing that looked like an avalanche.
Well, this is where the model gets really specific. We're not talking about some massive movie-style avalanche here. They calculated it was a relatively small block, or slab of snow, maybe only about 5 meters long. It would have slid down and basically just filled in the flat area the hikers had dug for their tent. And then, you have to remember, 26 days of non-stop snow fell before anyone even got there. Any subtle signs of that small slide would have been completely buried, erased by the weather.
Now we get to the really tricky one, the timing. This one has always been a head-scratcher. Why on earth would the avalanche happen 9 or 10 hours after they made the cut in the snow? It just feels wrong. It should have happened right away or not at all.
This is where the model is so clever, because it wasn't just one thing, it was a perfect storm. So part 1, yes, the hiker's cut weakened the snowpack, but that wasn't the final trigger. The final trigger was the wind. That night, there were strong katabatic winds, which are basically heavy, cold air flowing downhill. This wind was steadily picking up snow and depositing it on top of that weakened slab, just above the tent. It was like a slow, steady loading process, adding more and more weight, hour after hour, right on that weak spot.
And get this is the absolute mic drop moment of the paper. The scientists actually ran the numbers. They calculated how long it would take for that specific wind to pile on just enough extra snow to cause that weakened slab to finally break free, and their answer? Somewhere between 7.5 and 13.5 hours. It fits the forensic timeline perfectly.
So that just leaves one last really disturbing question. If this was such a small, relatively slow-moving slide, how did it cause those horrific injuries? We're talking crushed ribs, fractured skulls. That doesn't sound like just being buried in snow.
And this is where the computer simulations provide a truly chilling answer. The hikers weren't just buried in soft snow, they were crushed. The simulation showed that because they were lying down, the block of snow didn't just cover them, it slammed down on them, pinning them against the hard, unyielding tent floor, a floor that they themselves had likely made even harder by placing their skis underneath for insulation. It wasn't like being buried, it was like a heavyweight press, which perfectly explains those specific, severe internal injuries.
So, wow. After all that, what does this all mean? This incredible piece of scientific detective work doesn't just change how we see the incident, it actually teaches us some really valuable lessons.
Now, we've got to be clear. The paper doesn't claim to solve every single bizarre detail of the case. There's still some weird stuff, like reports of low-level radioactivity on some of the clothes. But that's not what the scientists set out to do. What they did do was provide the very first scientifically plausible explanation for the core event of that night, the trigger that started the whole tragic chain reaction.
And maybe more importantly than just solving the mystery, this research gives us concrete, life-saving lessons. It's a stark reminder that you have to be aware of the hidden terrain underneath the snow. It proves that cutting into a slope, even one that looks safe, is a massive risk. And it shows how wind can be a slow, silent threat. For any adventurers out there today, the takeaway is crystal clear. Digging a snow cave is often a much, much safer choice.
So in the end, has science finally closed the book on Dyatlov Pass? It's given us this powerful, logical, and frankly brilliant explanation for the central tragedy. But the reason this story has gripped us for so long is because of those other strange details, the ones that still don't quite fit. So is this the final answer, or is it just one huge important piece of a puzzle that will continue to haunt and fascinate us for years to come?